So, the AC season is over, and it is once again time for predictions. First of all, the people that watched my last video and commented on the amount of diamonds I have, that wasn't my account. You can see this is my account, and I am significantly more broke than that. So, stop asking for my diamonds. I do not really have any. But for AC, if we look in here, we can see who made it in the top 16. Of the notable storylines here, pretty much everyone below 5 made it in on the final round of the season. So M3O beat us and HOH to make it in at 1300. We were both dodging the top seeds up here like WXC and BDR. NB beats NW1. I believe Cum and Leg played at 7 AM. RRH and MBO had really nice wins, but then HHH, WAO, OBV, WoW, and NFI all didn't register. Last season there was 6 who didn't register, and this time it's 5. Until a change is made where you just get lost points for not registering, this is going to continue being a thing, I think. It seems around 4,600 points is that cutoff point where you can safely not register in round 6. And you can't really blame any of these alliances for doing it, because, for example, Nox registered as normal at 1900, and I think there were 3 or 4 1900 alliances between them, but they got BDR because we were directly below BDR. We felt like we couldn't play 1900 because it's a guaranteed loss, so we dodged out of that slot. NFI knew that we'd dodge out that slot, we told them, so they also couldn't play 1900, and then it just trickles all the way down. So there's always going to be some shenanigans in that 6th round, realistically. But if we go on over into predictions tab here, I have my draft of what I think's going to happen there, but I will clear that. It's just to think things through. And we have in the left here our 16 UC participants. So I think in this season of UC, there are 4 quite clear tiers of alliances. So you have your first tier of alliances, which is your UC stacks. These are the main contenders for going deep in the tournament, if not winning it. And all of those have recruited quite heavily for UC itself beyond their normal rosters. All of them, barring BDR, have gone up 2-3 million in alliance score for their UC rosters, so it's a very significant jump. The second tier will be HOH, MBE, and I would say NFI as well, who can't beat these alliances above them, really, or shouldn't, I'd say, because there will be matches where us, for sure, hopefully, will be trying to beat some of these later. But in terms of just roster strength and how it should play out, I think that's probably the right way to characterize it. Then you have your middle tier, who again can't really beat those above them, but can all be competitive with each other, which would be Leg, WAO, OBV, RRH. They are not in any particular order, by the way. If anything, RRH, I would say, is quite some distance, actually, the best of this tier, which, when you put it into context, is basically me saying that RRH is the 8th best alliance in UC, which I know there's been a lot of memes recently on official Discord of like RRH are going to win it. Esteban, Kovia are very funny with that stuff, but they have actually came a long way, and their roster is sleeper strong, to be honest. The only one here I'd say could really compete with them would be Leg, because Abdi and Waitoin stayed in, and it sort of depends how well they can trap them on buildings and deal with the soloing and whatnot. Then the tier below that, I would characterize this as mid-tier, but their whales that got them to mid-tier have left to the UC stacks. So here you have Pack, obviously, Peacetown, Black Bear, gone to WTF, so they can't be as competitive as they would be with those in. You have HHH, you have Jason, and Mena again to WTF. You have MBL, they had Christianor and Pinky go to WXC, which includes the Imperial Rock account. Then you have WoW with some people like Yummy Baby and BDR. There is the likes of, I think, Debige have you pronounced that, and Matt Jenin, who I've seen in and out of there, are in WXC as well. And then finally there is Cum, who haven't really lost anyone. I think they lost like Karasa to BDR, but they kept in their biggest whale, but still they're just kind of a tier below the alliances above here, so they just sort of slot into that tier naturally. So the matches between these brackets are quite easy to pick. The issues are where they face each other, and there are two matches in particular who I think are real toss-ups throughout this bracket. And ironically, given everything I've said, the first one is actually in different tiers. So that logic is consistent up here, but not as much here, because even with some of these losing their whales to the top UC alliances, they're still relatively competitive with some of these in places. So in terms of the first round, a lot of these are very easy picks, obviously, going off the seeding. So WTF will win easily here, MB will win easily here, HOH should win easily here, WXC win easily there. Maybe some people have questions about this. NFI should win that very convincingly. The only real concern is that it will be on a Wednesday, and Cum will not pick 1900 or 2200, so it'll be a really annoying time for NFI. On that note, Alim, Missim, whoever's watching this, I can pilot if you want, but I'm sure that NFI can take care of them there. Despite what Esteban and Kovya say with their propaganda on official Discord, RIH will lose immediately at the earliest opportunity, unfortunately, and then Enfrio will also take the win easily over WoW. The awkward pick here is CAC v OBV. Again, like with NFI, there is the time slot issue where CAC will not pick 19 or 22. It's on a Wednesday. OBV are a 1900 alliance, which means they're probably EU heavy. And this will fall somewhere which interferes with sleep or the workday, which will be potentially problematic for them. OBV itself, though, has retained its roster. They haven't lost anyone, and they do have some decent accounts on the top end of the likes of Iron Fist, the Mistborn, Shire, Esterhazy should be in here somewhere. Yeah, like these accounts can hold against the accounts that are in CAC, and they will definitely need to. CAC, whilst they lost their whales to WTF in return sent the people they've removed for UC recruits to CAC, which has bulked the roster back up a decent chunk. Like you can see the participant leap here. Although I think some of that is a bit fake because a lot of it was alts to feed Black Bear in this last match. That you can see up here with all these Mel and P accounts that are in WoW. So they would assumedly not be participating in UC because they just wouldn't care. I'm not entirely sure. As I've said in previous predictions videos, CAC have, it sounds so harsh, but they have no coordination, they have no rally filling systems, they have no timing systems, they have no shot calling that I can tell. They are entirely boom or bust on solos. The problem they have is then holding the buildings they solo out, picking enough troops out in short windows to actually take buildings because of the timing issues. If this match is at 1300, it would assumedly conflict with the WTF HHH match as well, which would mean that potential pilots for CAC would be conflicted because they'd be playing the WTF match. And CAC do have some strong accounts still in, like Dragon V, John Edward still in, which is surprising. Accounts like these can solo and do a lot of damage to an alliance like OBV. I remember last GC, I thought OBV would do a lot better than they did against RIH, I think it was, but they really didn't. It was Dark Angel, this was the Sungnam account, I think. New Sanagi, this was one of those Wise Joker max accounts, which just got passed down. But the depth isn't too high. Like Lay is in WXC. You got Peacetown Black Bear and WTF, like I said. I think U50K is also there. And a lot of how this match goes honestly depends on how seriously CAC take it. If they go all out and pilot for it, I would assume they would win quite convincingly. If they don't, which knowing CAC previously is what I would assume would happen, I think it'll just be the normal CAC story, where they will solo a lot, they'll kill a lot, but in terms of retaining points to win the match, as long as OBV are willing and able to heal through it all, stick their top leads into the right buildings, bring in more players to the match, and keep them more active, I do think OBV will take that one. But this one is a coin flip. And the annoying thing of that is it's round one. And if you get this wrong, then the way that the predictions work, then Cat go to losers, which means this is going to be wrong regardless. Or no, the other way around. OBV go to losers, and you get this wrong no matter what. Cat go to winners, you get this wrong no matter what, and it just trickles along, and your whole predictions are screwed immediately. So round one coin flip is very annoying. If this one goes wrong, it will really screw predictions, but I'm slightly leaning OBV. Round two, again, WTF. Way too strong, they have the highest concentration of max counts in the game. Sounds kind of harsh, but they could probably beat MBE with like 30 accounts, just because the top end is so ridiculous with Athena, Peacetown, Black Bear, Menat. Gannicus is in, Holy Knight, this is the Dudu account. There's solo leveling, which isn't showing here, who's the Darius account. I mean, it just goes on forever. They just have max account, on max account, on max account, or near max account, if you want to be really anal about how updated some of those actually are. So yeah, WTF, HOH should easily win that. WXC should easily win that. I would say WAO, whilst I went back and forth a bit with OBV here, will convincingly win in round two. The swing factor for this, I mean, first of all, pulling mid-90s for participants is very impressive. Plus, their top end naturally is very strong with CCK, CSM, Achille, people like that. There's obviously been memes in the past about some of these whales and merit and whatnot, but in an AC context, especially against an undermanned KAC, CCK soloing is just going to be brutal. And if he gets in a building with KAC coordination, there is literally 0% chance he can be kicked out of any building he gets into. But the swing factor here is the GCM whales, or a good chunk of them, like Fernan and Knight Rider, have joined into WAO for UC. That is quite unique for a mid-tier UC alliance like this to get a good chunk of fairly high-tier rally leads. And I would probably pick WAO even without them, but with them in, I think it'll be a very convincing victory there. Then NBL Cum, I think Cum will just have too many top-end rally leads for them to really deal with, despite what I would assume to be not being hugely organized at a UC level. And NBL obviously have lost their top-end accounts and realistically just can't really compete with top-end UC rally leads at this point. And then RRH, after that unexpected loss in round one, will very easily beat well. Then you have the close matchups here, I think, between HHH and Leg, because Abdi and Y2N stayed in Leg this time, whilst HHH lost their top ends to WTF. That will be more than enough of a swing for Leg to quite easily take that, I'd say. BDR and Frio, they have matched earlier in the season. BDR's roster hasn't really changed, like they haven't recruited much for UC, whereas M3 have bulked up a lot. A lot of their rally lead list was turned over for UC with Allerton, Damon King from 1HR. You have Strawberry and Godly from Dumb. I'm sure there's probably one or two I'm forgetting off the top of my head as well. That is significant, and it will be a bit of a swing in M3O's favor compared to before, but I will pick BDR here, and my logic is we just played M3O. The first 20-30 minutes of the match, maybe 30 minutes is probably overstating it, but for the first part of the match, we were doing quite well. We were being more than competitive with them, and that's with the UC roster. Our roster hasn't changed at all, so what we played M3O with here is basically the exact same roster that we played BDR with earlier in the season. We could get close to M3O. We could not get close to BDR at all in this match. Like, they just demolished us realistically. The score might not suggest it, but we did go into this match trying. We called it early because there was just no chance, but whilst we could start decent and get rally leads into buildings, the way AC at this level is played is you need to trade buildings back and forth a lot. When they started getting Falcon, Barak, Folking into buildings, it was just literally impossible for us to kick them. We'd try and just lost so many rallies we couldn't kick them out. And then the solo pressure of Sicario and Bezaming. So hard to deal with. So despite the UC recruits for M3O, I am going to pick BDR there. MBE over leg. MBE will just be too strong for them, I think. They'll probably bleed a good chunk against the Abdi and Y to win solos, but MBE are a very good coordinated alliance, and in terms of winning the match, I have no doubts they'll win that one. Same logic of WAO against CAC here. I think WAO will easily take this over OBB. Well, maybe not, maybe easily is a bit harsh, but I just think their early lead depth, including the GCM UC recruits, will just be a bit too much. Then we have an NFI come rematch. Again, I think NFI will win that. RIH will sadly go out of UC here in round 3, and then we'll get into the top 8 here. So we will not try in this match at all, it'll just be a waste of speeds, so WTF easily. I'd imagine it's probably a similar thought process for WA, AO, and NFI. NFI maybe could go all out in this one. It'll be very, very difficult, so I think MB and M3O clear picks there, leading to a very interesting matchup there in round 5. And then the second match I was alluding to at the start of the video, with the two main toss-ups of CAC OBB, will be WXC BDR. So I think this is the battle for second, basically. I think these two are very closely matched at this point, and they each have their own pros and cons. So BDR obviously have the organizational and shot calling advantage. They are so good at sticking the rally leads they want into buildings and defending on them. I was watching a video of BDR versus WTF just to research for this video a bit, and they held 2 rally waves on Omni against WTF, and admittedly it wasn't full UC roster WTF, but still, like, look at this. You've got Darius account, you've got Akron, who's a max account, you've got Peacetown, you've got Eris, who was the old Hellboom account, Jason, Holy Knight, who was the Dudu account, Menat. I mean, it just goes on and on. While someone like Omni is strong, being able to reinforce through a rally wave of that alliance twice and hold is insanely impressive, honestly. So I think their edge will be there in the more coordination and organizational parts of the event. Their issue, though, is their roster has plateaued a bit, is how I'd probably explain it, at least compared to WXC, where again, they haven't really got top-end UC recruits, and I think the spending of some of the top-end accounts has tailed off a bit as well. You still obviously have Bezaming, Sicario, and Folking as the main 3 that are just spending ridiculous amounts, but for that UC winner bracket, below that, it does seem like it's tailed off a bit. Whereas in WXC, you have a lot of these new whales, like, if I find them, like BZZB, this is an account made within the last year, I think, and he's almost at like 200 million UT score, which is approaching what, like top 30 account in the game. And you have people like this guy, who's one of only maybe 15 people in the game with 4-star Sorara. You have, I think he's down the bottom, or has he left the trains or something? I don't know, Matt Jenin. This guy, he's probably won like 20 things from that Merchant Guild event. He also is just spending ridiculous amounts. So WXC have a lot of these like new whales, which are just spending absurd amounts and approaching near max levels. And I do think there's going to be a tipping point for WXC where when enough of those whales reach that point, they're going to be very, very hard to deal with. But their roster generally is just deeper across the rally leads than BDR's is. Like Asterix, CC, Bananas, Savo account, Altizio, all those aforementioned names as well, like General 43 as well. It kind of just goes on forever how many huge leads they have. Their whole list of rally leads is probably above, say, 190 million UT score, just as a rough approximation of strength levels. And BDR definitely don't have that in their like 10 to 20 bracket of rally leads. And I think for the way the new rule set of AC is being played, with the whole map needing to be controlled, having more importance, with all these new building buffs. So now like Warrior is important, Free Warrior, Mother is more important because of the base attack buff, whereas before in UC you could just sort of get rid of it. No one cares about Mother. it's what, like 50% healing speed. It's a bloody UC elimination match. Just tell people to heal more. It doesn't matter. Now it actually matters because of the base attack buff. Same with holding an outpost of that. You need to put strong leads in all of those things that can defend solos. Even strongholds can potentially have 160 points per minute attached to them, depending on the buffs. And having this depth of rally leads that can both solo equal level alliances out of these buildings, but also hold against them is very difficult. Like, we ran into that issue against M3O, where we started very, very well. We had TARDIS on Mother, Grom on Warrior, I think Faye on Outpost. We had Zoika and Dell on the ports, and that's like 5 of our top. That's all our top leads, basically. That's our top 5. After that point, though, how do we kick anyone out of buildings? Like, M3O have Benny, Nightmare, and Draken in buildings at that point, and all our leads that can reliably win against them are already in buildings. And before that wouldn't be an issue because you could just hold like the near port, you could hold Casterly and then take the mines and just win off those 4 buildings. You can't do that now. You need to hold 5, 6, 7 buildings all match. And to do that, you need to be holding half the map and then still be able to kick people out of buildings consistently. And it's very hard and requires a lot of depth across the rally lead roster. And I think if BDR are going to lose to WXC, it will be in a similar fashion to us losing against M3O, where it's just that 10th strongest rally lead to 20th strongest rally lead, both not being able to solo people out of buildings, get rally wins on buildings, but also not being able to hold on buildings. Because BDR can stick, let's say, Folking on Casterly, Falcon Barrack on the ports. They like to keep Sicario and Bazeman free a lot of the time, it seems, to solo. But when you get past that point, with like those 5, who's holding Warrior to stop CC and General 43 and Asterix and Ortizio, all of them soloing at the same time? The depth is really, really important because you just have to hold so many buildings simultaneously and still be able to kick people out of buildings at the same time. Honestly, a lot of my gut is telling me because of that, WXC might take this. I just really struggle to bet against BDR's coordination because they just play the game mode so well. And because if I'm very slightly going to edge BDR, I genuinely think this is 50-50. Like, I don't even think it's 51-49. I could really see either of these winning. And I think it's just going to be flipped on like missing 1 defense call, 1 race, something like that. If you're going to watch any match in UC, I think the WXC BDR ones will be the best watches by far. And then in round 5, we're in the top 6, and now things will probably move quite quickly with the rest of these predictions. HOH MBE, again, we haven't strengthened for UC. MBE have with a few people like King Seb, GoTWiC, but they're not people that can solo our top end out of buildings, which is what you kind of really need at this point. And we won so convincingly over them at the start of the season. I don't think anyone can really bet against us here, but I would assume they will play a lot better than they did in this first match, and it will be a lot closer. They will probably also source pilots and racers and stuff like that from other people as well, so that will likely close the gap a bit also. Then WXC M3O, I think WXC would just be too strong for them, and I am very thankful that the way this bracket has fallen, that we're up here rather than facing one of these, because that would be so much tougher for us selfishly. Yeah, WXC are just a juggernaut at this point and very hard to deal with. And for that logic, I will also pick them to beat us in round 6. We will try in this, and we did knock them out last season in the same place, so I'd imagine they wouldn't want a rerun of that. But I think with the new rule set, upsets like that just aren't going to happen anymore, really, with this rules, because like I said with the match against M3O, when our top 4 or 5 rally leads are on buildings, we can no longer kick people out of buildings at this tier, and CC and General 43 and all them are still going to win solos against everyone in our alliance. So I think that's a bit sad if upsets like that just can't happen. But with these rules, that's just sort of how I see it playing out. The deeper your rally lead roster is now, it's just too much of a swing factor. WTF BDR, I've spent a lot of time discussing this in previous prediction videos, but I don't even think it's close anymore. The WTF roster is too strong, whereas the BDR one is same as it was before. There was the match here where it was very close, but this wasn't full roster WTF. Like, there is no Black Bear in here. There is no Gannicus in here. There's multiple true max accounts that weren't in the WTF roster here. Both Gannicus and Black Bear are top 10 accounts in the game easily. So yeah, I just think the pick here is clear. It's very predictable, which in a sense is sad, but the WTF roster is just overwhelmingly good. BDR WXC, I will pick BDR again, but again, this is a coin flip. If WXC win the first matchup, I think it's very likely they'd win the second matchup too, because BDR will be a lot more bled than they will be. So BDR already had this BDR M3O match. They'd have had this WXC match. They'd go into losers, they'd have the M3O match, then the HOH match, then them. And their season has already been, maybe not hugely expensive, but like this WTF match was expensive. Whereas WTF have just played, WXC, sorry, has played literally no one all season. So I think if WXC lose this first one, they can more easily go through losers and win the second one. And it really wouldn't surprise me if one of these wins the first match and loses the second, or vice versa. But I will be going BDR both times for the sake of predictions, and finally WTF to easily take the title in UC finals. There is. That will be my UC predictions. I will lock it in there. Hopefully, we will see some good matches in this stretch of UC. I do think there will be a lot of blowouts, though. I think with this new rule system, it's a lot more snowbally and harder to upset bigger alliances. And there's just very few alliances on equal footing. In terms of the best watches, it will be your WXC BDRs, your WXC M3Os, and HOH MB probably. Those will be the ones to spectate. Although, please, actually, I take that back. This match will be terrible. Please do not spectate this, because UC spectator just fucking sucks, man. Every time the lag is just horrendous. So yes, please just leave us alone in this match. If you don't leave us alone, you better donate me 20 million diamonds worth of charm, which will become irrelevant in round 8 when CC again just dumps a billion charm onto some random BDR member just to fuck someone else over again, just for the lols. And yeah, those are my UC predictions. Please do not kill me if some of them don't come in, especially if match 1, if this CAC OBV match doesn't come in. Predicting this one just really sucks, honestly, and could throw everything into disarray. But hey, maybe this will be the month that we get those 30 out of 30 predictions. Who knows?